Welcome, sleepy one. I'll be your storyteller tonight. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And now, close your eyes. Let's begin. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to download a dating app, but loneliness does strange things to you. Back in the late 1990s, it wasn't even apps yet, just glitchy websites, clunky message boards, chat rooms where you prayed the person on the other end wasn't a 40-year-old man pretending to be someone else. But I was 19, freshly out of high school, still fumbling to figure out who the hell I was. A little backstory. I grew up in a small town outside Dayton, Ohio. My parents divorced when I was 12, and I spent most of my teens bouncing between mom's house and dad's one-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and takeout. I wasn't popular in school. I was that quiet girl in oversized sweaters, the one who wrote bad poetry in the margins of her math homework and kept her head down in the hallways. When graduation came, most of my friends left for universities out of state, chasing futures, dorm rooms, and new lives while I stayed behind, working late shifts at a grocery store and saving for community college. I told myself it was temporary, but deep down I wanted more. I wanted someone who actually saw me. That's when I stumbled across a website called True Match. It was clunky as hell. Profiles looked like badly formatted resumes, and photos took ages to load on dial-up. Still, it felt like magic, a way to find people by interests, not just by whoever happened to make eye contact in the frozen food aisle. That's how I met Aaron Pierce. He said he was 21 at first, later 23. Eventually, I realized the number shifted depending on who was asking. His photo showed him leaning against a car, leather jacket, lazy grin, the kind of smirk that made my stomach flip back then. His messages came smooth, confident, a little too confident, but I was so hungry for attention I ignored the warning bells. The first time we met in person, I was 15. He picked me up at a gas station near my mom's house because I didn't want her to see. Looking back, that should have been the first red flag, a grown man insisting on secrecy. But at the time I told myself it was romantic, like some forbidden love story. We became this strange on and off summer thing. He'd vanish for months, then reappear with an apology and a smile that made me forget why I was angry in the first place. Nothing serious, not until my senior year. It was December, snow piled high against the curbs. I was walking home from my after-school job when his car slowed beside me. "Hop in, Maddie," he said, rolling down the window. His voice had this smoothness, like honey poured over glass. That night, parked beneath a flickering streetlight, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. God, I wish I could go back and shake that girl, tell her to run. By the time I turned 18, Aaron had convinced me to move in with him. "It'll be easier," he said. "We'll build a life together." I thought that meant partnership, someone to share bills with, laugh with, grow with. But what it really meant was me working 2 jobs, stocking shelves by day and waiting tables by night, while he quit every job he ever got after a week, claiming the bosses are all out to get me. The first fight was over something stupid, a dress I wore to class once. He accused me of showing off for other guys. When I tried to laugh it off, he grabbed my wrist so hard it left a bruise. Then he cried afterwards, saying, "I just love you too much, Maddie. I can't stand the thought of losing you." And I forgave him, over and over, until forgiveness became survival. When our son Eli was born, I thought maybe things would change. Aaron cried when he held him for the first time, kissed my forehead, swore he'd do better. And for a while he did. He'd wake for late-night feedings, sing lullabies off-key, whisper that we were a real family now. But sweetness never lasted with Aaron. The cruelty crept back in. First the words, then the hands. A slap here, a shove there, then the choking. His fingers tight around my throat whenever I said something he didn't like. He'd always apologize after, whispering, "You know I'd never really hurt you, Maddie. You just make me so mad sometimes," except he did hurt me, again and again, until parts of me stopped feeling anything at all. It was February, the kind of bitter cold that made the windows rattle and the pipes groan. Aaron came home late that night and with a friend. I'll call him Tyler. I was sitting on the carpet with Eli, stacking bright plastic blocks, his laughter filling the room each time he knocked them over. The air smelled faintly of applesauce and baby shampoo. For a moment, life almost felt normal, until the door creaked open. Aaron walked in, the sharp scent of beer hitting me before his voice did. "Hey, babe," he called out too loudly, dropping his coat on the floor. "Look who I brought." Behind him stood Tyler, awkward smile tugging at his lips. He looked nervous, like he already knew what kind of man Aaron really was. At first, everything seemed fine. They cracked open a couple of beers, shared laughs about some inside joke I didn't understand. I stayed quiet, keeping Eli close, my stomach tightening with that familiar dread. Then Aaron's tone shifted. Too sweet, dripping with sarcasm. "So, Maddie," he said, leaning against the counter. "You like having the house to yourself, huh? Bet you don't miss me at all when I'm gone." My heart skipped. That voice, honeyed and cold, always came right before the storm. "I didn't say that," I whispered, my fingers trembling against Eli's back. Tyler shifted uneasily. "Man, chill out." She didn't mean anything by it. Aaron ignored him. His eyes locked on me, his smile stretching thin and cruel. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see the way guys look at you?" "Aaron, please," I murmured, desperate to keep my voice calm. "Not tonight." "The baby—" "Shut up," he snapped. Then lower, darker. "I'll beat you like a man." My throat closed. I clutched Eli tighter, whispering, "Please don't, please." Aaron's eyes flicked to Tyler. "Take the kid." I froze. But I knew, God, I knew. Eli would be safer in Tyler's arms than mine. My hands shook as I passed him over. "Please," I whispered to Tyler, barely breathing. "Just keep him safe." The second Eli was gone, Aaron lunged. His fist tangled in my hair, yanking me to the ground. Pain bloomed white-hot as his knuckles met my face again and again. I tasted blood, warm and metallic, spilling down my chin. I crawled toward the phone on the side table, every movement slow and clumsy, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. I made it to the second digit before Aaron ripped the receiver away and smashed it into my cheek. "You call the cops on me?" he roared, his face twisted, eyes wild. "I'll kill you, Maddie. Do you hear me? I'll kill you and not think twice." His hands clamped around my throat. My vision swam, darkness blooming at the edges. My lungs screamed for air. Through the blur, I saw Tyler frozen, clutching Eli tight, terror etched across his face. "Go," I croaked. "Get help," but Aaron barked, "You move, I kill you both." I stopped struggling. A strange calm washed over me. This was it, I thought. He's really going to do it, then pounding. Loud, urgent, "Police!" Aaron froze. His chest heaved as he glared down at me. "Don't you say a word," he hissed, then straightened, wiping sweat from his face. He opened the door. "Evening, sir," one of the officers said. "We got a hang-up call from this number." "Everything all right?" Yeah, Aaron replied smoothly, too smoothly. "Baby was crying. My girl just overreacted." I stumbled into view. Blood streamed from my split lip. One eye was already swelling shut. The officer's face hardened. "Ma'am, are you okay?" That was all it took. The cops pushed past Aaron, forcing him against the wall while another helped me sit down. "You're safe now," he said softly, but I didn't feel safe. Not yet. At the hospital, one officer lingered by my bed, voice low. "I've seen a lot of injuries in this job," he said. "Yours? It's a miracle you're alive." Aaron was arrested that night. From jail, he called me, his voice calm, almost casual. "Why'd you do this to me, Maddie?" he asked. Not an apology, not anger, just disbelief that I'd finally stopped protecting him. He was sentenced to 26 days in jail. 26, that was all. But before he could serve them, he vanished. For months, he stalked me, blocked numbers, strange cars outside my work, the sensation of being watched no matter where I went. I lived in constant fear, jumping at shadows, sleeping with the lights on. Then one day the calls stopped. I found out later why. He'd moved on, to another woman. I tried to warn her. God, I tried. She didn't believe me. And one night, she didn't survive. He strangled her in her apartment, just like he'd promised he'd do to me. Aaron Pierce is in prison now. Life sentence. No parole. And even though I know he can't touch me anymore, I still wake some nights gasping, my throat burning with the memory of his hands. I live with guilt. Guilt that I survived and she didn't. That my silence in those early years might have let him keep hurting women. But I also live with relief. Relief that Eli never saw me die on that living room floor. Relief that, for once, the police arrived in time. Relief that I'm still here to tell this story. Because if I hadn't left him when I did, I know, without a single doubt, it would have been me. I never thought I'd actually download Tinder. It always seemed like one of those apps people joked about, but secretly judged you for using. I grew up in a small city called Riverton, where gossip travels faster than the morning church bells. You can't grab milk without running into someone who remembers your middle school braces. That's part of why leaving for college felt like freedom. Finally, a chance to exist without every move being dissected. I'm 19 now, a freshman at Ashwood University, a mid-sized campus tucked into the hills about an hour from home. College has been exactly what people said it would be. Late-night study sessions that blur into sunrise, cheap ramen eaten straight from the pot, and endless roommate conversations about everything from mascara hacks to who's secretly hooking up with who. For context, I've always been the kind of girl people notice even when I don't want them to. In high school, guys asked me out for bragging rights, and some girls hated me on sight. I'm not being conceited, it's just the truth. My mom used to warn me, you need to be careful, Ava. People will want things from you just because of how you look. I'd laugh it off every time. She worried too much. It all started one Thursday night in our dorm. Hannah and Jess, my roommates, were sprawled on the futon, scrolling through their phones while I sat hunched at my desk finishing an essay. Ava, Hannah blurted, grinning, you would kill it on Tinder. I laughed without looking up. Please, that's literally the last thing I need. No, I'm serious, Jess said, tossing me her phone. Look at these creeps messaging me. Half can't spell and the rest think dog filter selfies are hot. You'd probably get 100 matches in an hour. Not interested, I muttered, fingers still clacking on the keyboard. They didn't drop it. For 30 relentless minutes, they teased and pleaded until Hannah finally snatched my phone, downloaded the app herself, and started swiping through my Instagram for photos. She picked one of me in a yellow sundress, one with smoky eye makeup, and one laughing at a coffee shop. Within minutes of going live, my phone began buzzing nonstop. See? Jess grinned. Told you. You're the hot one. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help laughing as the notifications piled in. Some messages were cliché. Hey gorgeous, those eyes though, wid tonight? Others were disgusting. I ignored most of them. But swiping through became a nightly game. Mocking bios, rating selfies, joking about which guy looked like he lived in his mom's basement or had a secret family in Idaho. It felt harmless, silly fun, until 2 nights later. That's when I got a message from a profile named Bleeding Muse. No photo, just a black and white sketch of a rose dripping what looked like ink. His bio was blank except for one sentence. His first message read, I saw you. You're brighter than the moon and darker than sin. I laughed out loud. What is this? A Hot Topic poem from 2007? Hannah leaned over my shoulder. Oh my God, Ava, that's so cringe. Block him. But something about it, its weird confidence, made me pause. I typed back, smooth. You write that in every girl's DMs? The reply came instantly. No, only you. That should have been the red flag. Instant replies. Too intense. But instead I showed Jess and we joked about how desperate he sounded. I didn't block him. Over the next few days he sent paragraphs, melodramatic poetry, bleeding metaphors, sketches he claimed to draw himself. One was of a girl with long hair standing beneath a streetlight. The caption said, she doesn't see me, but I see her. Creepy, I muttered, tossing my phone onto the futon. Tell him to chill, Hannah said, half laughing. It turned into a weird form of entertainment. I'd read his over-the-top messages in a fake, sultry voice while Jess and Hannah cackled. Just some angsty wannabe artist, we figured. Then the drawings got darker. One night, he sent a photo of a crumpled piece of paper covered in smeared writing. My name scrawled over and over in something reddish-brown. Looks like fake blood, I said uneasily. Jess frowned. Ava, that's not funny anymore. You need to unmatch him. Oh, I did. I unmatched him and deleted the chat. I thought that was it. It wasn't. The next evening, my WhatsApp buzzed. Unknown number. One message. It was him. Same username. Same style. Same sick poetry. Do you know how crazy I am for you? I'd bleed just to prove it. I froze. My throat went dry. How the hell did he get my number? Hannah glanced over my shoulder, color draining from her face. Ava, delete that now. But I didn't. Maybe it was anger. Maybe fear disguised as defiance. Maybe I just needed to feel like I still had control. I typed back before I could talk myself out of it. I bet you aren't man enough to actually show your face. Loser. I hit send when 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was 12:34 a.m. I wasn't even supposed to be at the dorm. Campus was empty for the holidays and I'd gone home, alone. My mom was away on a work trip, her suitcase still by the front door. The sound of the chime echoing through the quiet house made my blood run cold. I moved down the stairs barefoot, heart pounding so loud it filled the silence. The old steps creaked under my weight. I hesitated at the door, breath trembling, and leaned toward the peephole. No one. Just the porch light cutting through the fog. I let out a shaky exhale. It's fine, I told myself. Maybe a package, maybe a random delivery. I unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. Cold air hit my skin. No person, no car, nothing, just the distant hum of crickets. Then I looked down. A red envelope lay on the doormat. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It smelled metallic, sharp, sour like rusted pennies. Inside was a single folded paper, the words jagged, written in something thick and brownish red. Did you miss me? I slammed the door and twisted the lock, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I think someone's stalking me, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. He was outside. He left me something. The dispatcher's voice was calm but firm. Stay on the line with me, ma'am. Can you move to a safe part of the house? I backed away from the door, turning off every light one by one, hoping whoever was out there would think the house was empty. My chest ached from how hard I was breathing. I strained to hear any movement, any breath that wasn't mine. Then I made the worst mistake of my life. I peeked through the kitchen window into the backyard. He was there. A man stood in the middle of the yard, shirtless, motionless, his body pale in the moonlight. His eyes were locked on mine. My knees almost gave out. I grabbed the nearest flashlight and flicked it on, the beam shaking in my trembling hand. It hit his chest first, and I saw it. My name, Ava, carved into his skin. Fresh blood oozed from the letters, running down his torso like red tears. I couldn't breathe. Slowly, I moved the light upward to his face, and my stomach dropped into nothing. It wasn't a stranger. It was Mark, my childhood best friend's stepdad, the same man who used to drive us to soccer practice. The same one who once hugged me too long, the same one who once commented on my Instagram. Beautiful. Just like your mom. He smiled now, wide, unnatural, proud, like a kid showing off something he'd made just for me. I dropped the flashlight, screamed. I ran upstairs, slammed my bedroom door and locked it, pressing myself into the corner with the phone still in my hand. Ma'am, stay calm, the dispatcher said through the speaker. Officers are on the way. Don't open the door for anyone but the police. I sat there shaking, listening, counting every breath. It felt like hours before I finally heard the sirens. When the police arrived, they searched the yard. He was gone. All they found were bloody footprints leading into the woods behind our house. I gave them everything. The Tinder screenshots, the WhatsApp messages, the red envelope. They investigated, but nothing tied directly to Mark. The profile was deleted, the number untraceable. When they went to question him, they found out he'd quit his job months earlier, left his family, disappeared. My childhood best friend won't even look at me now. Her mom swears she didn't know. It's been weeks. I still check every lock twice before bed. Every creak makes my heart stutter. A few nights ago, I woke to scratching at my window, faint, deliberate. When I looked out, I swear I saw a shadow move away. The next morning, there was a white rose on the porch, its petals soaked in blood. Tied to it was a note. The blood may fade, but I never will. This weekend, I'm filing for a restraining order. My mom begged the police to keep watch to arrest him if he resurfaces, but I know he's out there watching, waiting. And every night, I wonder if the next knock at my door will be the last sound I ever hear. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to meet someone off an app. But then again, I never thought I'd be single at 32 either. Life has a way of gut-punching your ego when you least expect it. Just 6 months ago, I was sharing an apartment with my girlfriend of 4 years, Julia, in a quieter corner of Cleveland, not far from Lake Erie. I thought we were building something real, marriage, maybe even kids. But when you live with someone long enough, the cracks don't stay hidden. For Julia, my long hours in IT were the problem. For me, it was the way she started drifting. Late nights at the office. A new perfume, no, not perfume, cologne, faint but distinct, not mine. The night she finally admitted she'd been seeing her coworker friend, I didn't yell or throw things. I just packed a duffel, grabbed my laptop, and moved into a one-bedroom rental across town. Wasn't heartbroken in the movie sense. No tear-stained ice cream nights or sad playlists echoing through empty rooms. But there was this quiet hollowness. Nights especially were brutal. That's how Tinder happened. At first I told myself it was just for distraction. Swipe left, swipe right, trade a few dry jokes, maybe grab a drink if conversation didn't crash. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just something that made me feel like a person again, not a failure collecting dust. Most of the women I met felt the same. Drinks, laughter, polite goodbyes, nothing that stuck. Then about 4 months ago, I matched with Elena. Her profile stopped me mid-scroll, not because she was model gorgeous, but because her photos had soul. None of the usual mirror poses or vacation selfies. They looked intentional, like someone behind the lens actually felt something. One shot caught her laughing at a street fair, lights blurring behind her. Another showed her silhouette against the lake at dusk. The last was black and white. Elena in a cafe, chin on her hand, eyes lost somewhere beyond the glass. Her bio was simple. Writer. Coffee addict. Lover of black and white photography. Always chasing stories. That last line hooked me. Chasing stories. We matched on a Tuesday night. Me. So, who takes your pictures? You've got a good eye. Elena. Guilty. Self-timer and stubborn patience. Photography's my therapy. Me. Seriously? Self-timer? They look like magazine covers. Elena. That's the goal. The conversation flowed easily. No half-hearted emojis or one-word replies. She asked questions, teased me, shared stories about her favorite authors, even wanted to know my worst client horror story in IT. For the first time in months, I caught myself grinning at my phone like an idiot. By Thursday, she invited me to dinner at her apartment. I hesitated. Meeting someone in their home for a first date wasn't exactly textbook safe, but then she said she wanted to show me some of her unpublished work. Photos I never post online. I don't let just anyone see them, she wrote. But you seem like someone who'd understand. I don't know if it was curiosity or flattery that won, but I agreed. It was a cold Saturday evening when I drove across town. Elena lived in an older brick building near Lakewood, the kind with narrow halls and faint smells of other people's dinners clinging to the air. Onions, curry, old carpet cleaner. I double-checked the address she'd sent, surprised. The place looked so ordinary it was almost invisible. She buzzed me in. When I reached her floor, the door was already cracked open. Elena stood there smiling. She was shorter than I expected, with shoulder-length dark hair tucked behind her ears and a long cardigan draped around her frame. "You made it," she said warmly. Her voice was soft, steady, with that calm confidence people either fake or are born with. "Of course," I said, smiling. Couldn't pass up the chance for a home-cooked meal. She laughed, quiet, unforced. "Let's hope it's edible." Inside, her apartment was spotless, minimalist to the point of unnerving. White walls, black furniture, a couple of green plants near the window, each one perfectly symmetrical like part of a set. But what really filled the space were the photos. Black frames lined every wall, dozens of black and white portraits. Not the playful, soft ones from her profile. These were raw, intimate. Each face caught mid-emotion like the moment before a confession. Some smiled faintly. Others looked startled, haunted even. There was something unsettling about how close the camera seemed to have been. I remember standing there, my breath catching, realizing that every photo seemed to look back. One photo showed a man smoking alone on a porch, the shadows slicing across his face like bars. Another was of a woman brushing her teeth, caught mid-motion, toothpaste foam spilling over her lips. A child sleeping on a sofa, a blanket half slipped to the floor, then one that made me pause. An older woman at her vanity, half-dressed, frozen mid-expression, like she'd just heard something behind her. "Wow," I said, trying to sound casual even as something in my gut tightened. "Your models really know how to pose. Looks so natural." Elena smiled faintly, tilting her head. "They're not models." I let out a small laugh, waiting for the punchline that didn't come. "Wait, seriously? Then how do you capture moments like this?" "Through windows," she said simply. The words hung there, light as dust. "Secretly," she added, her voice calm, steady, like she was describing a recipe. "People are their most honest when they don't know they're being watched." For a second, I just stared at her, searching her face for a smirk, any hint of irony. There wasn't one. Her eyes stayed on mine, steady, proud. I forced a laugh that sounded too high, too thin. "That's risky." "It's worth it," she said, sipping her wine. "Real emotion can't be posed. Fear, trust, loneliness. They only exist when someone thinks they're alone." A chill crawled slowly up my spine. Still, I followed her to the small dining table. She poured the wine, deep red, fragrant, and served pasta in delicate white bowls. The smell was rich and buttery, but my appetite was gone. The photos seemed to press in from every wall, each pair of eyes watching, silent and knowing. Elena talked easily, like nothing was wrong. "So," she asked between bites, "do you have family here?" "Not really," I said, swirling my wine but not drinking. "Favorite movie?" Zodiac, probably." "I like mystery." Her lips curved slightly. "Me too." Her gaze drifted past me again, not quite at me, more like she was studying the light hitting my face. My pulse kicked up. "Has anyone ever caught you?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. "Once," she said after a pause. She took a slow sip, her expression softening into something almost nostalgic. She was furious, but I apologized and made it up to her. "How?" I asked before I could stop myself. She smiled, gentle, secretive. "It doesn't matter." My gut screamed to get out. I thanked her for dinner, mumbling something about an early morning. I stood, but before I could reach the door, she stepped in front of it, quiet, graceful, her hand on the knob. "Wait," she said softly. "Before you go, I want to show you my masterpiece." My stomach twisted. She turned and walked down a narrow hallway, motioning for me to follow. I hesitated, then slipped the fork from the table into my sleeve. Ridiculous, but it made me feel less helpless. At the end of the hall stood a locked door. Elena pulled a small key from her cardigan pocket. Even before the lock turned, a rancid smell leaked through, thick, chemical, and sweet like rotting flowers. When the door creaked open, the world tilted. A dim yellow bulb swung overhead, casting a sickly cone of light. In the center of the room sat a wooden chair, and on it, a woman. For a second, I thought she was alive. She sat perfectly upright, wearing a red swimsuit, her eyes wide open. But her skin, oh God, her skin was gray and taut, her limbs puffed and veined like marble. Her jaw twitched, and for one awful heartbeat, I thought she was about to speak. Then her mouth fell open, and a stream of maggots spilled onto the floor. I dropped the fork. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Elena whispered behind me. Her voice trembled, not with fear but pride. "I watched her for weeks before I took her. Look at that expression, fear and trust captured forever." My throat closed. My brain clawed for any rational explanation. A wax model, a film prop, something. But the stench was real. The low buzz of flies was real. The slow drip of fluid hitting the tile was real. Then, with a faint wet sound, a piece of the woman's cheek sloughed off and slid down her face like damp paper. I screamed. Elena grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Don't be scared," she said quickly. "I can fix her. I'll glue it up. You understand me, don't you?" I tore free and bolted. I don't remember the hallway or the stairs, just the taste of bile and the sound of my heartbeat roaring in my ears. I burst into the street, gasping, waving at the headlights of a passing car. A couple pulled over as I screamed for help. The police arrived minutes later. They stormed the apartment, but Elena was gone. The woman's body was still there. The photos still lined the walls. My half-eaten plate of pasta sat untouched on the table. Neighbors said she'd only lived there a few months. Paid cash, kept to herself. No one knew her real name. The police searched for weeks, nothing. A month later, I got a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single black and white photograph. It was me, sitting at a cafe with my coworker, taken through the window. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to meet someone off a dating app. 2 years earlier, I would have laughed and said I wasn't that desperate. But by September 2022, I was living in a small Minnesota town called Pine Grove, where nothing ever happened, and everyone already knew everyone else's business. I was 16 then, a restless high school junior, tired of the same hallways, the same faces, the same conversations. My parents were strict but not unfair, the kind of strict that comes from love. My mom worked night shifts at the local hospital. My dad was a contractor who left before sunrise most days. They trusted me because I'd never given them a reason not to. My grades were fine, I worked weekends at a coffee shop, and I wasn't into parties. But as the summer faded and school started again, something hollow settled inside me. Everyone around me had someone. A boyfriend, a crush, late-night texts that made them smile at their phones. I wanted that too. That's how I ended up downloading an app called True Match. At first it was awkward. Most of the guys were from nearby towns, too pushy, too weird, or only after one thing. I almost deleted it. Then I matched with a boy named Tyler Reeves, 17. Lived one town over in Milford. Said he'd left high school early and was taking classes at the local community college. His profile was simple. Sitting on a porch with a dog, leaning against a car, one mirror selfie in a hoodie. Average. Maybe a little shy. But his messages were what caught me. The first thing he wrote wasn't "Hey" or "You're cute." It was, "You look like someone who listens before they speak." That's rare, am I right? I laughed out loud when I read it. It was oddly specific, kind of dorky. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe I just don't like wasting words." "Then I already like you," he sent back. Most girls just ghost or send emojis, and somehow that was the start. We talked more. He said he'd actually gone to Pine Grove High for a year before transferring after some drama with teachers. When I asked what kind of drama, he admitted he'd been caught borrowing essays online. Plagiarism, basically. But he laughed it off, said it wasn't serious. Something about that didn't sit right. Schools don't usually expel people for harmless mistakes, but I let it slide. Tyler started offering to pick me up after my cafe shifts. I didn't have a license yet, and he said he liked keeping me company. At first, it felt almost brotherly. He joked, told dumb stories, bought me milkshakes. Once, he even showed up during a thunderstorm to drive me home so I wouldn't have to walk. But the way he looked at me sometimes, it wasn't brotherly. By late September, the air turned sharp with cold, the trees bleeding red and orange along the streets of Pine Grove. A girl from school, Brianna, threw a big house party while her parents were gone. Everyone was going, even the quiet ones. I almost didn't. But Tyler texted, "Come with me. I'll drive." That night, when his car pulled up outside my house, he smiled through the window. "You look amazing." I glanced down at my outfit, just jeans and a jacket. "It's nothing fancy." "Trust me," he said softly. "You don't need fancy." The party was chaos, music shaking the walls, bodies pressed together, the air thick with beer and perfume. I spent most of it in the kitchen chatting with friends while Tyler hovered nearby. He didn't drink, said he liked to stay clear-headed. I thought that was mature at first, until I realized his eyes never left me. Every time I turned, he was already watching. When things finally started winding down, I found him by the door. "Can you give me a ride home?" I asked. His answer came too fast. Of course. The drive home was quiet at first. Just the hum of the tires on the cold asphalt and the faint crackle of the radio. My breath fogged the passenger window. The silence pressed between us until Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Hey, listen," he said, his tone softer than usual. "I think you and I should go out sometime." My stomach dropped. I'd been waiting for this. "Tyler," I tried to sound kind. "I'm sorry. I just don't feel that way. I really like hanging out with you, but only as friends." His jaw flexed, a muscle ticking just below his temple. "Friends? Huh. After everything I've done for you, all those rides, all that time, I never asked for... I offered you gas money, remember?" I cut in quickly. "You insisted on helping." He looked at me then, half hurt, half angry. For a moment I thought he might say something cruel, but instead he forced a thin smile. Right, no worries, friends. I exhaled, relief and guilt tangling inside me. Thanks for the ride, I murmured, slipping out of the car. Inside, the house was dark and still. My parents were asleep. I changed into pajamas, brushed my teeth, and crawled into bed. Exhaustion pulling at me. I'd just closed my eyes when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from a girl I barely knew, someone who'd been at the party. My pulse quickened as I opened it. It was a long paragraph. Hey, I don't know you well, but I thought you should know Tyler's been bragging tonight. He showed people photos of you sleeping. I froze. Then came the images, screenshots. My room. My bed, me lying there unaware. Taken through my window. A cold wave rushed through me. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I turned toward my window. The blinds were open. The latch unlocked. He could have been standing out there, watching me whenever he wanted. My hands shook as I typed, fingers trembling over the screen. Me. Never contact me again. Almost instantly, his reply appeared. Tyler, wait, you don't understand. I wasn't trying to scare you. I just wanted to keep you safe. Watching you sleep, it felt peaceful. I stared at the words, my throat dry. Then I typed back, each letter hard and sharp. Me, lose my number. Don't ever speak to me again. I hit block and threw my phone onto the bed. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. Eventually, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember was the sound of shattering glass. I jolted upright. My room was dark except for the pale light of the street lamp filtering in through a hole where my window used to be. A shadow stepped through, shards crunching beneath his shoes. You've got to be kidding me, I gasped, scrambling out of bed. The figure lunged. His foot slipped on the glass, sending him forward, and that's when I saw it, the knife glinting in his hand. Tyler, I whispered, my voice cracking. My throat felt like it was closing. He pushed himself up, eyes wild, breath ragged. You weren't supposed to find out like this, he rasped. We were supposed to be together. I screamed and bolted for the hallway. He came after me, but the fall had slowed him. My dad's door flew open. What the hell's going on? He shouted, blinking into the dark. It's him, I screamed. It's Tyler, he's in my room, he's got a knife. Dad didn't hesitate. He charged past me, slamming into my room. The light flicked on. The window gaped open. Tyler was gone. The police arrived within 10 minutes, sirens cutting through the night. Paramedics too. It wasn't until they wrapped my feet that I realized I was bleeding. The glass had sliced them open. My skin was cold, my words jumbled as I tried to explain. At the hospital, I learned he'd vanished into the woods. A week later, they found him hiding at his uncle's cabin. In court, he sat there, hands cuffed, eyes hollow, and said, I don't know why I did it. I loved her. The prosecutor showed everything. The photos, the messages, the knife, the shattered window. The things he'd said at the party. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Breaking and entering, stalking, attempted first-degree murder. Later, his lawyers appealed. They said he had mental health issues, that his clean record made him less dangerous. The murder charge was reduced. 16 years. It's been 3. I moved away from Pine Grove. I don't use dating apps. I don't even trust new people. Still, sometimes lying in bed, I feel it, the weight of unseen eyes. The hairs on my neck rise, and I hear that faint echo of glass breaking like it's happening again. I know he's behind bars, but part of me is still frozen in that moment, standing barefoot in the shards, realizing how close it came. And sometimes I can't stop wondering, if I hadn't rejected him that night, would he have done it anyway? All I know is I survived. I never pictured myself as someone who'd fall into the world of dating apps. But after the year I'd had, it almost felt inevitable. I was 25, freshly back in my hometown of Maplewood, Illinois. My 4-year relationship with my college boyfriend, Caleb, had just imploded, though truthfully, it had been rotting long before it died. For years I'd convinced myself that the jealousy, the subtle control, the long silences were just his way of loving me. That's how some people show they care. I used to tell myself, trying to make sense of the knots in my chest. But deep down I knew it wasn't love. It was ownership dressed as affection. The night everything broke was quiet, almost anticlimactic. I'd come home late from work, phone dead in my purse, and found him pacing the living room, eyes red, jaw tight. "Where were you?" he snapped. "My phone died," I said, still in my coat. "I told you I had a late shift." "Don't lie to me," he hissed. "Who were you with?" When I realized he'd tried to track me and panicked because my location had gone dark, something in me cracked. I remember locking myself in the bathroom, sitting on the cold tile floor, shaking, tears dripping onto my knees. The faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air like smoke. That was the moment I understood. Love shouldn't feel like suffocation. Leaving him was brutal. The kind of breakup that drains the air from your lungs and leaves your apartment full of ghosts. But I managed. What came after, the emptiness, was worse. My friends had drifted off into marriages, new cities, careers. I'd just finished my communications degree and landed a decent marketing job downtown. But the silence that greeted me every night felt endless. The evenings were the hardest. I'd curl up in bed, blue light washing over my face, scrolling through my phone until my eyes burned, wondering if I'd ever find someone who didn't make me feel small. That's when I downloaded the apps. At first it was curiosity. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. Then it became habit. Swipe left, swipe right. Tiny flares of interest that died before they burned. The late night "you up?" messages made me roll my eyes, but I kept going. There was this quiet hunger for connection I couldn't shut off. That's how I found Ryan Matthews. His profile was normal, refreshingly so. A couple of clean-cut photos. One hiking in the Smoky Mountains, one at a rooftop bar with friends, and another holding a golden retriever puppy. His bio read, 27 mechanical engineer. Love hiking, cooking, and live music. Looking for something real. No shirtless selfies. No cryptic one-liners. Just grounded. I swiped right. He matched instantly. Our first messages still make me smile when I think about them. Ryan. So, Ashley from Maplewood, you strike me as a brownies over cookies kind of person. Am I wrong? Me. Wow, bold assumption. But you're right. Brownies all the way. Ryan. Knew it. Only true geniuses pick brownies. Me. Oh, really? And what makes you the brownie authority? Ryan. I make a mean triple chocolate brownie. Family recipe. Maybe I'll prove it someday. I remember laughing, really laughing, the kind that slips out before you can stop it. He wasn't trying too hard. He wasn't sleazy. Just easy to talk to. We texted for a week straight. Quick morning check-ins before work. Random midday updates, goodnight messages that somehow made the dark feel lighter. He told me about his job designing automotive parts, about weekend hikes, about his dog, the golden retriever, Milo. I told him about my love for trying new coffee shops, how I spent commutes binging true crime podcasts, and how I still hadn't figured out how to make friends again in Maplewood. It felt normal, comforting, familiar in a way that scared me a little. So when he suggested meeting up, I said yes. But that's where things started to shift. Ryan asked if he could come by my place. At first I froze. I'd never invited anyone from an app over before. The thought of a stranger in my home, the creak of the old floors under unfamiliar footsteps, made my stomach flutter with unease. I get it, he said over text. Totally respect boundaries, but if it helps I can bring coffee or dinner. Keep it low-key. No pressure. I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. My parents were out of town for the weekend, the house quiet and still. Maybe too quiet. And part of me, the lonely part that was tired of waiting for something perfect, whispered that maybe this was fine. Maybe I was ready. I told myself I could always throw him out if he turned out weird, so I said yes. Saturday morning arrived with that brittle mix of nerves and a small, foolish excitement. I cleaned like someone trying to make a good impression on a life that might be over in an afternoon. Wiped counters until my hands tingled. Straightened the throw pillows, opened windows to let the late winter air in. I pulled on a light sweater and my favorite jeans and, because of that silly brownie banter, baked a tray of triple chocolate brownies. The house smelled warm and faintly of cocoa. It felt like a private joke that only two people would understand. At 2:45, I checked my phone. Ryan, leaving now. Be there in 15. At exactly 3, I heard the knock. My heart did that little stuttering thing, like it wanted to sprint through my ribs. I smoothed my sweater, inhaled, and opened the door. He was not Ryan. He was older, mid-30s maybe, and he wore his day on him. His work pants looked stained, sleeves dusted with the kind of grit that won't come out in one wash. His hair was greasy at the part, and his face had a fringe of unshaven stubble. He looked heavier than the photos, like someone who had stopped noticing the shape of his own shoulders. The light hit him wrong. He had an angerless, tired set to his jaw. He smiled, but it was crooked and thin. Hi, he said, forcing something meant to be friendly into his voice. He held the smile like a prop. Ashley, I managed, and for a second my brain scrambled for the script people use in situations that feel off. Who are you? I asked as carefully as I could, the kind of careful that tries not to sound like accusation. Ryan, he said fast, but then, after an odd little pause, he added, Well, my nephew helped me with the profile. Those are his pictures. I figured if I used mine, no one would swipe right. He chuckled, but it landed awkwardly, like a footstep in a room with no carpet. Every instinct in my body screamed to shut the door. My throat felt tight and my palms were suddenly hot, but I didn't slam it. I didn't call someone. I told myself I wasn't being rude, that escalating would make me look unstable. So I let him inside. We sat on the couch and I kept my body angled away, making myself small and distant at once. I offered him a brownie more out of some social reflex than hospitality. He took it but didn't eat it. He just held it, eyes trained on me in a way that felt less like looking and more like measuring. The TV murmured something about a morning show, but the sound blurred into the background of my own thoughts. I could feel the heat of the oven on my face, the tiny grit of sugar on my tongue from tasting batter, the faint citrus from the cleaner I'd used that morning. Everything smelled too domestic for how wrong the moment felt. I stood up and told myself I needed water. In the kitchen, I texted Lena with my thumbs that were suddenly clumsy. Hey, guy came over. Doesn't look like his pics. Kind of sketch. We'll call you soon. I almost hit send before hesitating, convinced it was dramatic, then pressed send anyway because the message felt like a small lifeline. When I returned, he was closer to the edge of the couch, leaning forward, hands clasped between his knees as if in prayer. His eyes were fixed on me. He tilted his head and said softly, You're even prettier in person. Thanks, I said, because what else do you say to a compliment that lands like a warning? My smile was tight. There was a silence that folded over itself. His stare didn't break. It held until the air felt thin. I couldn't do it. I tried to be polite, to make some reasonable exit for both of us. Listen, my parents are actually coming home soon, so you should probably head out, I said, voice a notch higher than usual, the way people do to force themselves to be heard in a crowded room. He sat for a long beat without moving. Then slowly he stood. Sure, he said. I get it. Relief floodlit my chest. I followed him to the door, fingers already curling around the knob, ready to shut the world out behind him. As he crossed the threshold, he reached into his pocket and pulled something small out. For a second, it was just metal flashing in the light, a glint like a lie under a smile. He unfolded a small folding knife and held it up so it caught the sunlight. You know, he said, almost conversational, as if telling me the weather. I could have killed you today. My breath hiccuped. My mouth went dry. Movement slowed to the viscous drag of a bad dream. He looked at me and then, unbelievably, he smiled. It was too casual, like the punchline of some private joke that I wasn't supposed to understand. Kidding? He added, laughing in a way that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. He turned and walked to an old pickup truck idling on the curb, climbed in, and drove away. The engine revved like an exhale. I stood in the doorway long after the taillights disappeared into the street, the cold evening air brushing my face. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled with the lock, fingers clumsy, the click of the deadbolt sounding absurdly loud. That night, I did what people do when the world shifts under them. I deleted every dating app. I blocked his number. I sat in the hollow quiet of the house and realized, with a kind of stunned clarity, how close the afternoon had come to unthinkable violence. The brownies were still on the counter, cooling and untouched, and the smell of chocolate that had once felt cozy now pressed against my teeth like a warning. I kept replaying the moment over and over. His voice, the casual way he said it, the cold folding knife glinting against his thumb. Months later, the sentence still lives in the quiet rooms of my head. I hear it when I wake up in the middle of the night, when the house is full of the small noises of an empty place, the pipe settling, the refrigerator humming, the old floorboards complaining as if they remember his footsteps. I could have killed you today. The memory has weight. It sits across from me at the kitchen table, the way a loose tooth sits against your tongue. Impossible to ignore and always there. And somewhere deep and honest inside, I know he wasn't joking. I never imagined I'd be that guy, sitting in the dim blue glow of my phone at 2 a.m., thumb twitching across a dating app like it was muscle memory. 40 years old, a mid-level developer in tech, living alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Fairfield, Ohio. My days bled together, code reviews, meetings that could have been emails, microwave dinners, and late-night Reddit scrolls until the screen stung my eyes. I wasn't the kind of man who turned heads. I wasn't even the kind who got invited to gatherings anymore. The breakup that tipped me into this rut wasn't explosive or cinematic. Elena, my partner of 5 years, had waited until after dinner. I still remember the sound of the fork settling against her plate. She took a slow breath and said my name in that careful practice tone people use when they've rehearsed pain. "Mark," she began softly. "I can't keep doing this. It feels like we're roommates who split bills, not partners who share a life." I stared down at my half-eaten pasta, watching steam fade into nothing. My throat felt tight, she sighed. "I've been patient, but you don't really let me in. I want more than this quiet half-love. I deserve it." There wasn't any shouting, no tears, just the unbearable silence of something ending gently. Over the next few weeks, she packed her things methodically, her sweaters disappearing from drawers, her toothbrush gone from the sink. By the time the last box left, the apartment felt too big, too clean. Nights were the worst. The bed felt like a stage with half the cast missing. Loneliness doesn't slam into you, it seeps. It trickles into the pauses between Netflix episodes, the empty chair at breakfast. The moment you realize one toothbrush will now last you months. That's when I downloaded Tinder. I told myself it was just to talk. Not to find love, not to rebound, just to feel seen by another voice that wasn't my cat or the cashier at Kroger. At first, it was robotic. Swipe left, swipe right, send a polite hey that fizzled into silence. Then came Clara. She was 35, auburn hair grazing her shoulders, freckles scattered across her cheeks, and a smile that looked alive, unfiltered. Her bio said she loved old jazz records, collected antique clocks, and cared for her paralyzed grandfather on their family farm. Something about that felt real, earthy, grounded. Our first chat started playfully. "Clara, okay. Important question. If you could eat only one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?" Me. "Easy. Pasta. It's cheap, filling, and hard to ruin." Clara. "Stew. My grandpa swears by it. Says it's the only real food left in this world. Maybe I'll make it for you sometime." "I'd like that. I don't think anyone's ever made me stew before." Clara. "Then you're long overdue." She was funny, quick, warm. She didn't send dry one-liners. She actually wanted to know me. She asked about my job even after I warned her it was all screens and debugging. When I sent her a picture of Juniper, my cat tangled in a paper bag, she replied, "That cat looks smarter than most people I know." We met twice before things began to feel serious. The first date was coffee downtown. She showed up in a green coat with one button missing, hair wind-blown, laughing with her whole face. The second was a quiet walk along the river. She talked about losing her mother young, being raised by her grandfather, and how the countryside made her feel both safe and trapped. By the third week, she called me one night. "Come out Saturday," she said, her voice soft but buzzing with excitement. "I'll cook. You've been eating frozen dinners, haven't you?" I laughed. Guilty. "Then you'll finally have real food," she teased. "But it has to be at my place. I can't leave Grandpa alone at night." There was a small pause, a flicker of hesitation I ignored. It was fast, sure, but after months of numb quiet, warmth felt worth the risk. Her farmhouse sat 20 minutes outside town, tucked behind a line of bare trees off a narrow, cracked road. The drive was lonely. By the time I reached the gravel driveway, dusk had already smeared purple across the sky. The house looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. White paint peeling, porch swing creaking softly in the wind, a faint yellow glow leaking from the kitchen window. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Clara stood there, apron tied around her waist, cheeks flushed from the stove's heat. She smiled, stepping forward to kiss me lightly on the cheek. "You made it," she said, breath warm against my skin. Come in, come in." The scent hit me first. Herbs, onions, raw meat, something metallic beneath it. Inside, the house was cluttered but not messy, more preserved. Faded portraits, heavy drapes, clocks of every size ticking out of sync, their uneven rhythm filling the silence. In the kitchen, I froze. On the counter sat several slabs of raw meat, unwrapped, unchilled, slick and glistening in the warm kitchen light. Thick drops ran down the cutting board and pattered softly onto the wooden counter, leaving dark stains that spread like oil. I tried to keep my voice casual, though something about it made my stomach twist. Shouldn't that be in the fridge? Clara glanced over her shoulder and waved a hand dismissively. Doctor's orders. Grandpa's on a special diet, full meat. It's the only thing his body accepts now. Oh, I muttered, forcing a thin smile. Right. The stew on the stove burbled softly, releasing waves of steam that smelled thick, fatty, almost metallic. She stirred it slowly, humming a faint tune under her breath. Something old and lilting, like a forgotten lullaby. As night settled, the house grew unnervingly still. We sat in the living room, a fire whispering in the hearth, chatting about movies. I tried to focus on her laughter, but my eyes kept wandering toward the dark hallway. At the end stood a half-closed door. Her grandfather's room. She'd told me earlier that he was paralyzed, bedridden, unable to speak, hadn't left his room in years. But I hadn't heard a single sound from behind that door. No coughs, no creaks, not even the faint rhythm of breathing. Around 11, Clara stood and smoothed her apron. "I need to change Grandpa into his nightclothes and give him his medicine," she said softly. "I'll be right back." I nodded, pretending calm, but my nerves prickled as soon as she disappeared down the hall. The silence that followed was heavy, so complete that I could hear my own pulse. Out of boredom, or maybe some reckless curiosity, I stood and wandered. Near the kitchen, I noticed a narrow door half hidden behind a rack of coats. It led down to the basement. The moment I cracked it open, a foul stench hit me, thick, wet, unmistakably rotten. My eyes watered. I covered my mouth with my sleeve and thumbed my phone flashlight on. The wooden stairs groaned beneath each step as I descended. My knees trembled, breath shallow. The beam of light wavered over shelves, jars, dozens of them. Glass jars filled with cloudy fluid, each containing something pale and obscene, a finger, an eye, a strip of flesh curling at the edges like wilted paper. My stomach lurched. Crates stacked high with bones filled the far wall. Hooks dangled from the beams, rusted, still streaked with dark residue. From one hung what looked like a torso. Ribs split wide, organs gone. One arm still wore a gold wedding ring. I doubled over and vomited onto the steps, the acid burning my throat. Footsteps creaked overhead. Then softly, the sound of a door closing. Panic surged through me. I stumbled upward, nearly tripping on the last stair, and slammed the basement door shut. My chest heaved as I stumbled back into the living room just as Clara reappeared, smiling that same gentle, practiced smile. "Everything okay?" she asked, my voice cracked. "Yeah, just..." Stretched my legs. Her eyes lingered on me for a long second, too long. Like she could hear my pulse from across the room. Then she smiled again, perfectly calm. "You look tired. Want me to set up the guest room?" My mind screamed at me to run, but my body betrayed me. I nodded. "Yeah, that'd be great." She led me down the dim hallway. As we passed the grandfather's room, I noticed the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, I caught a glimpse of a hospital-style curtain around the bed. The air that drifted out was sour, heavy with decay. On the floor just inside the threshold, plates sat piled high, crusted with scraps, buzzing with flies. I swallowed hard. The guest room was across the hall. She smiled again, her eyes catching the light in a strange way. "I'll grab blankets. Make yourself comfortable." As soon as she disappeared, I slipped across the hall and pushed open the old man's door. The stench hit like a wave, sweet, cloying rot that clung to my tongue. My phone light flickered as I moved closer. The figure in the bed lay perfectly still, hidden behind the curtain. His chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. I turned toward the small window on the far wall. The frame was old, stiff, but wide enough to crawl through. I eased it open inch by inch, the hinges groaning quietly. Then I heard it, a sound behind the curtain. Slow, rasping breathing, wet and uneven. I turned just as the head snapped toward me. The curtain swayed back. Eyes, milky, lifeless, locked on mine. And then the mouth opened. The lips stretched, splitting at the corners. The grin widened impossibly, revealing rows of teeth. Too many, too long, jagged like glass shards. My blood turned to ice. I bolted for the window, scraping my arm open on the jagged frame as I hauled myself through. I hit the ground hard, rolled, and ran. Branches clawed at my face, tearing skin, but I didn't stop until the woods broke into the main road. A truck driver braked hard when he saw me stumbling, bloody and gasping. At the nearest gas station, I called the police. They went to the farmhouse that night. Here's the part that still crawls under my skin. When they arrived, the house was empty. No Clara, no grandfather, no jars, nothing. Property records showed the place had been abandoned for almost 20 years. The last listed owner was Raymond Fletcher, a butcher paralyzed in a farm accident in the late 90s. He died in 2002. There was no record of any Clara Fletcher. No license, no birth certificate, a trace. I deleted every dating app after that. But sometimes when I dream, I'm back in that room, the curtain beginning to pull aside and those dead eyes find me again. The grin stretches wide, teeth glinting in the dark, sharp and endless. And every single time I wake with the smell of raw meat thick in my nose. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to sign up for a dating app. For most of my life, I'd been painfully awkward around people, especially when it came to dating. I wasn't the type to approach strangers in coffee shops or strike up conversations at bars. Honestly, I didn't even go to bars much. After my last relationship ended a little over a year ago, I sort of disappeared into myself. Long nights of Netflix, endless overtime, video games, and quiet dinners for one. I told myself I didn't need anyone. That solitude was safer, but loneliness has a way of sneaking in through the cracks, usually when you think you've sealed them for good. My best friend, Tasha, had been on my case for months. "Liv, come on," she said one night from her couch, our half-eaten pizza sagging on a greasy box between us. "You can't just sit in your apartment forever. Try something new. Everyone's on dating apps now." I groaned, slumping back. "You know me. I'm terrible at small talk." I freeze up. "I'll look like a total idiot," she smirked, licking sauce from her thumb. "You'll be fine. It's not like you're meeting them face to face. You just text. You're great at texting." I rolled my eyes but couldn't argue. Texting was safer. You could edit yourself, hide the awkward pauses, sound clever when you had time to think. Real life didn't offer that luxury. That night, against my better judgment, I downloaded OkCid. I told myself it was just curiosity, just to see who was out there. Worst case, I'd waste an hour or two. Best case, maybe I'd find someone decent to talk to. After a week of half-hearted swiping, I matched with a guy named Ethan Rivers. His profile stood out not because it was trying too hard, but because it wasn't. He described himself as a freelance graphic designer who loved cooking, horror movies, and hiking. His photos were simple, one at a farmer's market, one sketching in a notebook, another of him smiling awkwardly beside his dog, a scruffy mutt named Scout. Our conversations flowed easier than I expected. He wasn't pushy like some of the others. He cracked self-deprecating jokes. "I'm 5'7", so don't wear heels unless you want to dunk on me," and actually paid attention to my replies. He didn't just wait for his turn to talk. He asked questions, remembered details. Over the next 2 weeks, we texted constantly. Memes, movie recs, tiny updates from our days. There were moments I caught myself smiling at my phone like an idiot. Then one Friday night, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. "I know this is cliché," he texted, "but I make a mean pasta. Come over and I'll cook for you. We can watch some indie horror movies. Promise it won't be boring." My first instinct was to say no. Every safety article screamed, "Meet in public first," but then I hesitated. He seemed different, kind, grounded, and at 6'2", I towered over him. I figured if anything felt off, I could handle myself. Still, I texted Tasha. "Girl, you are not going to some dude's apartment for your first date," she replied immediately. "I know," I typed back. "But he seems different. He cooks, remember? And I'm not exactly fragile." "Different is what every girl says before she ends up on Dateline," she shot back. We argued back and forth until I finally promised her a safety plan. I gave her his full name, his address, and we agreed on a code word, pineapple. If I texted it, she'd call with an emergency excuse for me to leave. The night of the date, I stood outside Ethan's apartment building in Portland, my stomach in knots. The place was small but well kept. Brick exterior, ivy climbing the side, a warm yellow light glowing through his window. I texted Tasha, "Here, I'll update if things get weird." "Don't die," she replied, followed by a knife emoji. I laughed quietly and knocked. Ethan opened the door almost immediately, smiling. "Liv, hey, wow, you're taller than I pictured." "Guess I didn't lie on my profile," I said, forcing a laugh. He stepped aside, ushering me in. His apartment smelled faintly of sandalwood incense and something deeper. Old books, maybe. Canvases leaned against the walls, sketchpads scattered across the coffee table. It was cluttered but intentional, creative. Not dirty, just lived in. "Want the tour?" he asked. "Sure." He showed me around. A cozy living room, a cramped kitchen, and finally his bedroom. He lingered there just a second too long, his grin crooked. "This is the bed I told you about, king size. Plenty of room for tall people." I forced a chuckle. Good to know. We moved on quickly, and I expected him to start cooking, but instead he grabbed a bottle of wine from the counter and presented it with a mock flourish. "Ta-da. Red imported, cost me $100. You're gonna love it." "Oh, nice," I said, smiling politely. But something about that made me frown inside. It wasn't the bragging. It was the way he said it, like a magician introducing a trick he couldn't wait to see unfold. "So, what's for dinner?" I asked, trying to sound light. Ethan hesitated, then shrugged. "Didn't really get around to buying groceries. Figured wine would be enough for the vibe, you know?" I gave a nervous laugh. "You said pasta." "Yeah, but wine's more romantic, right?" he said, grinning like it was a clever joke. My stomach growled in response. I hadn't eaten all day, assuming he'd cook. He must have noticed because he quickly added, "I've got chips and bread. We can snack." Not exactly the romantic dinner I'd pictured, but I didn't want to seem ungrateful. We poured wine, ate stale chips, and made awkward small talk. Still, I couldn't ignore the way he kept refilling my glass every time I took a sip. "Whoa, slow down," I said after the third top-off, half laughing. "Come on, loosen up," he teased. "This is the good stuff. Don't waste it." I forced a smile, though unease had started to crawl under my skin. Something about his insistence, the way his eyes flicked from my glass to my mouth, made my chest tighten. After the bottle was empty, he dimmed the lights and turned to his shelf. "Movie time," he said. I expected some quiet indie horror or maybe a cult classic. Instead, he pulled out a scratched DVD case, a Serbian film. My stomach dropped. "Seriously?" I asked. "That movie's not really my thing." "That's because you don't get it," he said smugly, sliding it into the player. "It's not just shock value, it's art, social commentary." "You'll see." "I've seen it," I said, firmer this time.
Not interested in watching it again. He waved a hand dismissively.
"You didn't really see it. You probably just looked away. Watch it with me, I'll explain it." Against my better judgment, I stayed. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe I didn't want to make a scene in a stranger's apartment, so I sat there, tense, pretending to watch as he hit play. Half an hour in, the film reached one of its most disturbing scenes. I tried to distract myself, picking up my phone and sending Tasha a casual text. "Still alive." Just watching a movie, Ethan noticed immediately. "Who are you texting?" he asked, his tone sharp. "My friend," I said, keeping my voice even. "Just letting her know I'll be late." He relaxed a little, leaning back. "Good. Don't want any distractions." The room went silent except for the TV. Then came that awful scene. Ethan didn't speak. He just breathed, heavy, ragged through his nose. I glanced sideways. His eyes were fixed on the screen, wide, unblinking. His lips were parted slightly. "You good?" I asked carefully. He didn't answer, just made a low sound, almost a groan. Then without warning, he scooted closer until our hips touched. His hand slid onto my thigh. I jerked back. "What are you doing?" "Why not?" he whispered. My skin crawled. "I should go," I said, grabbing my purse and standing up. "Wait!" he snapped, his voice sharp and full of irritation. But I didn't stop. My pulse thundered in my ears as I bolted for the door. The hallway outside was dark, and the moment the latch clicked behind me, a high-pitched animal-like screech erupted from inside the apartment. I froze. For one horrifying second, I thought he'd locked the door, or that he was coming for me. My fingers trembled as I fought with the knob. Finally wrenching it open, I ran down the narrow stairwell out into the street, heart hammering. The sound of that screech seemed to chase me, echoing faintly behind me. I called Tasha as soon as I hit the sidewalk. "Get here now, please," I stammered, my voice shaking. She pulled up 5 minutes later. The second I climbed into her car, I broke. Tears came fast, uncontrollable. On the ride home, I told her everything. The fake dinner, the constant refills, the movie, the way he touched me during that scene. Tasha's face went pale. "Liv, that's seriously messed up. I'm so sorry I wasn't closer." "It's not your fault," I whispered, staring out the window. "But I don't think that guy's just awkward. There's something really wrong with him." The next day I blocked his number. It didn't feel like enough. I replayed everything in my head until I finally called the police. Not to file a report, but as a warning. The officer on the phone sounded tired but kind. "You're right," he said. "None of this is technically illegal, but we'll note his name. If something else happens, we'll know where to start." It wasn't justice, but it was something. A small measure of control after a night that stripped it away. I didn't date again for years. And when I finally did, I made one rule. Public places only. No exceptions. Because what I learned that night was this. It's not the obvious red flags that destroy you. It's the ones that smile, pour your wine, and only show themselves when you're already sitting in the dark beside them, realizing too late that you're not with someone awkward. You're with someone dangerous. I never imagined I'd be the kind of man to try online dating. For most of my life, I hadn't needed to. I married young, right after college, to a woman I believed I'd grow old with. Her name was Rachel, and she was everything that anchored me. My partner, my compass, my best friend. We built a small, quiet life together just outside Springfield, Missouri. I worked for a local logistics company. She taught elementary school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, warm hours. I used to think that kind of peace lasted forever, until the night it was stolen from me. Rachel was killed by a drunk driver in the fall of 2005. She'd been driving home after grading papers at her favorite coffee shop. The man who hit her was twice her size and 3 times over the legal limit. She died instantly. I still remember the call, 11:48 p.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting the dark. I answered half asleep, my voice thick, unaware that the sound on the other end would shatter the rest of my life. The years after that were a blur of silence and survival. I didn't just lose my wife, I lost the person I was with her. My house became a tomb. I'd spend whole nights staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator because it was the only sound that proved the world still existed. Friends stopped calling after a while. I stopped answering long before that. People told me to move on, to let time do its work. But how do you move on when every breath of your home still smells faintly of her shampoo? When you walk past her favorite bookstore and still hear her laugh, I couldn't even bring myself to wash her coffee mug. It stayed on the counter for 2 years like a shrine. For a long time, I believed I'd stay alone. Grief hardens into habit after a while. But grief also morphs, it dulls, softens, waits. 7 years later, that waiting turned into something unbearable. I'd watch my friends hold their kids, hear them talk about anniversaries, and go home to an empty house that echoed whenever I opened the door. That's when I did the thing I swore I never would. Online dating. It was the early 2000s, still awkward, still whispered about in break rooms and family dinners. After a week of debating, I chose Match.com. It seemed safe enough. One night, with my hands trembling like I was doing something forbidden, I sat at my old desktop computer and made a profile. Name, Daniel. Age, 41. Status, widowed. No kids. Never remarried. I uploaded a few photos, one from a cousin's barbecue where I actually smiled, one from a fishing trip, and another from a company dinner. Nothing impressive, just enough to prove I was real and hopefully not terrifying. Then somehow, someone messaged me. Her name was Samantha, 38, lived in Fairview, a town maybe 20 minutes away. Worked in retail? Her profile was short: book lover, dog owner, coffee addict. Her photo showed a brunette with kind, almost shy eyes and a smile that wasn't perfect but genuine. At first, I didn't expect much, but our chats turned easy, natural. She asked about my favorite movies, what kind of work I did, and eventually, hesitantly, about Rachel. I didn't want to go there, but something in her tone felt sincere, so I told her. When I finished typing, she responded, "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I lost someone too, an engagement that ended badly." I get it, that hole never really fills, does it? That message sat on my screen for a long time. Somehow it made me trust her. Weeks passed. Our conversations stretched late into the night, growing warmer, more familiar. I found myself smiling at my phone, something I hadn't done in years. It felt strange, wrong even, like betraying Rachel, but it also felt alive. One night, after pacing around my living room for 20 minutes, I finally typed, "Would you like to meet in person? Maybe grab a drink at Johnson's Tavern? It's quiet, nothing fancy." Her reply came almost instantly. "I'd love that, Daniel. I think it's time we met." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. Nearly 10 years since my last date, and suddenly I was back to being a nervous kid again, checking my reflection, overthinking every word. The next evening, I shaved, ironed a shirt I hadn't worn in years, cleaned out my car, and tried to ignore the knot in my chest. Johnson's Tavern was only 5 minutes away, a rustic, wood-paneled bar where the regulars knew your name and the jukebox never stopped playing old country songs. When I stepped inside, laughter rolled through the air. The smell of fried food and beer clung thick as the sound of pool balls cracked in the back. It was warm, familiar, grounding. I found a small table near the back, away from the noise, ordered a soda to steady my nerves, and pulled out my phone. "Here," I typed to Samantha. "Take your time. I'll be waiting." "Hey, I'm here." "Just grabbed a table," she replied. "Running late, caught in some traffic. Be there in 10. I exhaled, trying to calm the restless pulse in my throat. That's when Gabrielle, the bartender, sauntered over. "Damn, Mr. Daniels," she teased, her grin wide. "You're dressed sharp tonight. Big date or something?" I laughed, but it came out shaky. "Something like that, Gabby." She was only 19, home from college for the summer, owner's daughter, small-town curious in that way where she seemed to know everyone's secrets before they did. If you wanted gossip, you went to Gabby. She could find out where someone was born, what they drove, and who they were sleeping with, all before your drink hit the counter. "Let me see," she said, eyebrows raised with playful suspicion. "Got a picture?" I hesitated, then sighed and handed her my phone. She glanced at the photo of Samantha. For a second, barely a second, her expression changed. The grin softened, faltered. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Huh," she murmured under her breath. "What?" I asked, a nervous laugh catching in my throat. "Nothing," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She's pretty. You're lucky." Then she turned and walked away. Gabby never just walked away. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was overthinking, but something in my gut wouldn't settle. The clock above the bar ticked louder than it should have. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Almost there. Just a couple more minutes. That's when I noticed Gabby again, whispering with 2 older men at the bar. I recognized them. Local truckers, regulars. They kept glancing toward me, their faces tight, serious. The mood of the room shifted, subtle but sharp. Conversations dimmed. Someone turned the jukebox volume down. When Gabby came back, her hands were trembling slightly as she set my drink down. "Can I see that picture again?" she asked softly. "Sure," I said, unlocking my phone, heart starting to race. She stared at the screen longer this time. Then she leaned in, her voice low enough for only me to hear. "Daniel, that's not Samantha." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Her throat bobbed. "That's a man. His real name's Charles. He got out of prison 6 months ago." The words hit like a fist. What are you talking about?" Gabby glanced around, making sure no one else was listening. "He's known around here. He pretends to be women online, sets up dates with lonely guys. He's been caught breaking into their houses afterward. Stealing, stalking. fraud, burglary, you name it. He only got out early because his family pulled strings. I blinked hard, shaking my head. No, that's Gabby, that can't… Daniel. She cut in sharply, eyes wide with urgency. I called the police. They're on their way, but you need to act normal until they get here, okay? Normal? My pulse thundered. He knows where I live. I told him about Rachel. God, I told him everything. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed again. Parking now. See you in a sec. Gabby's face went pale. She whispered, one of the truckers is going to keep an eye on you. Don't freak out. Just stay calm. The bar door creaked open. And there she was. The person I knew as Samantha stepped inside, wearing the same warm smile from her profile picture. For one surreal moment, no one moved. The entire bar went still, the air thick enough to choke on. I raised a trembling hand in a half wave, forcing a hollow smile as every muscle in my body screamed. My fists tightened under the table. Gabby approached the newcomer, her voice steady but clipped. Evening. Need a table? Oh no, Samantha said in a high, lilting voice. I see my date already. At that exact moment, red and blue lights flashed against the tavern's wooden walls. 2 county sheriff cruisers pulled up outside. The smile on Samantha's face faltered. Then, panic. He spun on his heel, bolting for the exit. He didn't make it. One of the deputies met him at the door, slamming him down hard onto the wooden floor. Chairs scraped back, someone gasped. The high-pitched voice cracked as he shrieked, "This is a mistake! I'm a woman! I'm a woman!" But the deputies weren't listening. They cuffed him fast, read him his rights, and dragged him outside. The bar stayed silent except for the sound of his shouts fading into the night. I sat there frozen, my drink untouched, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Rage and humiliation twisted together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Gabby touched my arm gently. You okay? I laughed once bitterly. No, I said. Not even close. That night I drove home without the radio on, the glow of the dashboard lights blurring through my tears. When I got inside, Rachel's photo was waiting on my dresser, her smile steady, untouched by time. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at it until the sun began to rise. All I'd wanted was connection, a little warmth in a cold house. But what I found was a reminder that monsters don't always hide in the dark anymore. They hide behind screens, behind smiles, behind kind words typed on glowing phones. From that day forward, I swore off online dating for good. I'd rather live with loneliness than ever again invite that kind of evil into my life. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd actually end up on a dating app. I used to laugh when people said they met online. It sounded pathetic back in high school, like confessing you couldn't make a real human connection. But 2 years into college, I wasn't laughing anymore. I was 20, buried under civil engineering at Lakewood University, and honestly, I was worn down to the bone. I had friends, guys I studied with, people to grab pizza with, but when it came to dating, it felt like I was watching life through glass. Every time I opened Instagram, I'd see couples I knew, arms wrapped around each other, city lights behind them, greasy diner selfies at 2 a.m., even dumb study photos captioned with inside jokes. Meanwhile, I was always the one walking home alone from the library at ungodly hours, earbuds in, pretending the silence didn't feel like a weight pressing on my ribs, but it did. It crept in, quiet but heavy, until one Friday night it finally cracked open. A friend invited me over to hang out, just movies, food, something easy. When I got there, one of the guys was sitting way too close to a girl I didn't recognize. They weren't even official, but the air around them shimmered with that unspoken tension. The way their knees brushed, how they leaned in close, whispering and laughing like the rest of us didn't exist. I left early. Back in my dorm, I sat in the dark while my laptop fan whirred and the mini fridge hummed like background noise to my own emptiness. That's when I finally admitted it. I was tired of being alone. That night, I downloaded Plenty of Fish. Making a profile felt humiliating. What the hell do you even say about yourself without sounding like a complete idiot? I threw together something half serious. Liked horror movies, video games, hiking when I wasn't buried in calculus, and coffee. Always coffee. Then I uploaded a few pictures. One at the gym, one from a trip home, one with my dog. I hovered over publish, heart pounding, then tapped it anyway. Loneliness makes you reckless. The first week was rough. A few matches appeared, but most vanished without replying. The ones who did texted like bots, their words flat and hollow. Each night I scrolled through faces that blurred together, confidence draining by the minute. I almost deleted the damn app. Then one night while cramming for a midterm, my phone buzzed. New message from Allison. Her profile picture stopped me cold. Long brown hair, dark eyes, a faint smile that looked reluctant, like she hated taking photos but tried anyway. Her bio was short, introvert, gamer, sarcastic but nice, looking for someone who gets me. Her message read, "So you're actually kind of cute." Didn't expect that on here. My chest tightened, stupidly excited. I typed fast. "Me? I'll take that as a compliment." Allison, most guys on here are super creepy. You look normal. That's rare. Me. Trust me, I had the same fear about girls on here. Allison, fair. So what's your deal? You look busy. We talked for 2 hours about professors we both hated, games we played, how cafeteria food should qualify as cruel and unusual punishment. She was quick, funny, real. For the first time since downloading that cursed app, I felt like maybe this could actually lead somewhere. Over the next few days, we messaged constantly. She said she lived off campus, 19, a freshman majoring in English. We joked about our lives, her drowning in essays, me suffocating in equations. Sometimes while studying, my phone would buzz. "Allison, stop working and talk to me. I'm bored. If I fail this midterm, I'm blaming you." Allison, worth it. It felt easy, natural, like breathing. Then, about a week in, the tone shifted. One night she got flirtier. It started as jokes about my gym photo, then, "Allison, truth or dare?" It was childish but fun. "Truth, what's your worst class? Dare, send a picture of your messy desk." It went on until the dares got bolder. When she told me to take off my shirt and send a picture, I laughed nervously but did it anyway. She sent one back, wearing just a tank top, and it kept going. Step by step, line by line, until I crossed one I swore I never would. I sent her a nude. She sent something too, though thinking back, I'm not sure it was even her. At the time, I went to bed grinning like an idiot. For once, someone actually wanted me. The next morning, silence. No texts, no replies. Not that afternoon either. By evening, the unease had started to crawl under my skin. She'd never gone more than a few hours without responding. Maybe she was busy, I told myself. Homework, friends, anything. But as midnight came and my phone stayed dark, dread pooled in my gut. The following day, while I was reviewing notes, my phone rang. Allison, she had never called before. I answered instantly. "Hey, Allison." Silence. Then a man's voice, deep, cold, trembling with anger. "What the hell are pictures of you doing on my 15-year-old daughter's phone?" My blood went to ice. "What? Who is this?" I stammered. You heard me?" The voice growled, low and shaking with fury. "You've been sending nudes to a child. Do you understand how serious this is? Do you have any idea what kind of sick freak that makes you?" Blood roared in my ears. The room tilted. My vision tunneled. "I didn't know," I blurted out. Her profile said she was 19. She told me she went to my university. I swear I didn't know. "You're a liar," he snapped. "And now you're going to pay for what you've done. Unless you want the police at your door in the next hour, you'll send me $11,000 to make this go away." My lungs seized. I couldn't catch a full breath. His voice was too calm, too deliberate, like someone who'd done this before. "You've ruined your life, son," he said almost coldly, "sending sexual photos to a minor. You know what that makes you? A pedophile. The cops don't play games with people like you. I should be calling them right now." My throat felt raw, my hands slick with sweat. "I swear to God I didn't know," I pleaded, voice cracking. "She told me she was 19. Her profile said she was in college. Please, you have to believe me." A pause. I could hear his breathing, slow, heavy, controlled. Then, "You think the police care about your excuses? You think a judge is going to pat you on the head and say, 'Oh, he didn't know'? No, you'll be branded for life, prison, registering as a sex offender. Goodbye to your future." My heart slammed so violently I thought I'd faint. "Please," I whispered, "please don't do this to me." "I didn't know." Another pause. Then his tone changed, less rage, more calculation. "Maybe there's another way. Maybe I don't need to involve the police. Maybe I can keep this between us." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "You're going to compensate me for the trauma you caused my daughter," he said coldly. $11,000. That's the cost of therapy. That's the cost of me keeping my mouth shut. 11,000. My chest tightened. I barely had 700 to my name, money I'd saved for a used car. "I don't have that," I said quickly. "I'm just a student, please." "Then figure it out," he barked. "Call your parents, borrow, sell your computer, your phone, I don't care. You have 2 hours. If I don't hear from you, I'm walking into the police station." The line went dead. I sat there frozen, staring at my phone like it might explode. For a long moment, I couldn't even move. My pulse hammered in my throat. My stomach knotted so tight I thought I'd throw up. The next 2 hours blurred together. I called my parents, hands shaking, voice breaking as I tried to explain. At first, they didn't believe me, or worse, they thought I had done something unforgivable. My dad's voice exploded through the phone. "What the hell were you thinking? Sending nudes? Jesus Christ, are you insane?" "I didn't know," I kept saying. "She told me she was 19, Dad, please." "I didn't know." Then my mom got on, her tone softer but full of dread. "Honey, are you sure this is real? It could be a scam. People fake things like this all the time." "It didn't feel fake," I whispered. My whole body was trembling. He knew my name. He knew my school. He sounded serious. My dad cursed under his breath, then quieter, resigned. "How much money do you have?" 700. He exhaled, long and angry. "All right, I'll cover the rest." His voice was still hard, but beneath it I could hear fear. Not for himself, for me. We wired the money. My parents sent the rest. Then we waited. For the next several hours I sat in my dorm room, staring at the door, every sound outside making my pulse spike. When my phone finally buzzed, I nearly dropped it. A text from Allison's number. "Unknown, we got the money. Good choice. Enjoy your life. Don't ever contact this number again." Then, silence. The next day, the number was disconnected. For weeks after, I lived in paranoia. Every knock at the door made my chest seize. Every time a campus security car drove by, I thought it was for me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My grades tanked. My parents kept telling me it was a scam. "Think about it," my mom said. "Real cops don't let you pay them off. They show up. That guy preyed on your fear. It was blackmail. Plain and simple." My dad was less gentle. "This better be the last time you ever pull something this stupid. You got lucky. If it wasn't a scam, you'd be finished. No second chances. You hear me?" I heard him. But I still don't know the truth. Part of me believes my parents that it was just a trap, an elaborate setup designed to squeeze desperate guys like me. The fake profile, the sudden escalation, the demand for money, it all fits. But the other part, can't let it go. What if Allison wasn't fake? What if there really was a father on the other end of that line? What if I crossed that line without even realizing it? That's what keeps me up at night. Not guilt, but uncertainty. The not knowing. All I know is this: I never touched a dating app again. And if anyone ever asks me about meeting people online, I tell them the truth. Be careful. Because one mistake, even one you never meant to make, can destroy your life in a heartbeat.